the UK, so I'm here to talk about reading habits within England. I'm going to look at some different areas. Firstly, because I've been teaching for 20 years and my specialism is English language teaching. I'm also a mother of 3 children, so I know very well the difficulties of reading. My oldest son is 16, and then I have a 10-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. And I've actually seen how things are changing very much within the UK, within the reading strategies, from when my son was learning to read, and now the strategy is being used with my daughter as well. And obviously I work for publishing companies and I travel all around the world training people on reading and literacy. So I work for Penguin Random House, and also Paramount Books is our liaison company within Pakistan. So in terms of reading within the UK, I think we struggle as much as any other country in the world to get good readers. We always have reluctant readers. One thing in England that is paramount and is very, very important is the structure of bedtime reading with your children. So if I think back to my own experience from when I was a child and also my own parenting with my children, we start from when they are babies. And people say, how do you read with babies? First of all, everything is quite kinesthetic and tactile, and we use books in the bath, which sounds terrible. But they are just plastic books, and it's just about a study skill, habit and strategy about getting very, very young children to turn the page, to touch things, to feel the idea of a book. So this is where it starts, and it's quite important. Then from that, if you are a parent in the UK and you're walking in the city centre with your child in a pushchair or stroller, they have fabric books on their pushchairs and strollers. And again, there is no reading process because they don't speak. So unless they speak, they can't be reading. But again, it's the whole idea about learning styles. It's very kinesthetic, it's very tactile. They're touching the pages, they're getting used to the book, the same as if they're a baby and within the bath. So this is how we start to do things at a very, very young age within the UK. And then this moves on to perhaps storytelling at home. And you will find in most British families, there's always an exception to the rule. There will be some families that don't read with their children, and it's a struggle for some teachers within the UK. But part of any child's routine is the story at bedtime. And this is also an indication that the child then needs to go to sleep. So it's part of their routine. We always read, and it's encouraged almost to have a mini library within your home. So my daughter Alia, who's 4, my oldest son, he's too old for a bedtime story, but the youngest one, we have a mini library. It sounds very extravagant, but it's not at all. It is just a selection of books. And this is actually quite important, to give children choice. I think so many times they're told you have to read this book and you have to read that book. That will never create a nation of readers. If we give them some personalization and we create a hook that will help them to enjoy reading, then it is much, much better. So my daughter will go and choose. At the moment in England, I'm not sure about Pakistan, everything is unicorns, mermaids, and these are the topics. Every year it changes. So you pick something that is interesting for her. And then the reading process starts. And through most books, everything is very visual. And even if you don't respond as a learner to visuals, it's still very easy to pick things up. So she will start to tell me the story before we've even looked at any of the words. Because she's looking at the pictures, she has chosen that book, so she has personalised it because she enjoys it and she likes it. So the intrinsic motivation is there, because I'm not saying to her, Alia, you have to read this book. She's chosen it. So I think this is the most important thing, and I think this is something that needs to be put into schools as well. When we think of curriculums and schemes of work, often the students are told you have to read this book. That's not always a good choice, because actually what works for some children doesn't work for other children. And I know as a mother of boys, and now Alia as a girl, how they read, what they read is very, very different. And whilst a story is extremely important in the term of reading, I think we have to look at other ways of reading. Reading is not just about a book. It's not about a story, a beginning, a middle and an end. Lots of children don't respond to storybooks because they don't like the idea of reading, or maybe they're reluctant. So in England, what we're doing now is introducing a lot of non-fiction. because if they don't like a story, perhaps they will be intrigued or enthused by a topic. So they have a particular topic which then encourages them to read. So I always give the example on my training sessions about reading with my oldest son. He's now 16, mashallah, he's taller than me. He was a terrible reader, and this is kind of an embarrassment for me because I'm a university lecturer, my specialism is English. So I was trying to think, what can I do? What do we do in England? How can I combat this problem? For us, Diary of a Wimpy Kid saved our life. And this goes back to everything that I've said previously. If you can encourage and create intrinsic motivation within the children, it will really, really help them to read. So he went from being what I would call a reluctant reader, somebody who didn't enjoy reading, to somebody who now, he's extremely bright, he's very clever, he reads a lot, and this is just because one series and one title changed his aspect, changed his thinking about reading. So again, within the UK, this is a strategy that we're looking at. It's about changing the reading process. We're not saying you must read this. We're saying there is a choice. What do you like to read? What do you enjoy reading? And this will create much, much better learners. And I think we have to think about reading in general. If students read well, lexically, they're much, much better. Their vocabulary is much, much better. If they are good at reading, their grammar will be better, their speaking will be better, they listen better, and actually their writing will be much, much better. Because reading is not just about reading a book, whether it be a storybook or non-fiction, it's also a very, very useful language tool. Not just as a foreign language, but also within children's native language. Because if they're reading, they're recognising grammar within a structure, which means their grammar ability will be better because they have more of an active knowledge about it. The same with language. If students or children don't read, they have a very limited lexical range. And this is very detrimental to their studies in general. So I think reading within the UK, we're trying to look at it now as a broader spectrum. Reading is not just about reading, it's about every other skill set area within the classroom, whether that be for younger learners or for much higher level learners at university and college. If they don't read, they won't be very good students. So this is how we're trying to combat the situation in England. Things will change. What I'm saying now will change within 5 years because digital literature is becoming more commonplace, social media is much more commonplace. So we're trying to introduce different strategies to try and keep students interested, because often they don't want to read a book and turn the page, they want to look at their tablet or their computer and so forth. So I think reading is a never-ending process. It's not just about how we do things in the UK or how they do things around the world in other countries, because there will always be pros and cons to how we do things within different areas globally. It's about looking at how we keep up with change with some of our students, because as I said with my children, what my 16-year-old enjoys is not what my daughter will enjoy, and it will change quite a lot. So I hope that gives you just a very brief introduction to how things are done from a teacher's point of view and a parent's point of view, and how we're trying to focus on things within the UK.